Tonight we're going to be talking with or about the Poser Clinic and the Poser family and their history. And tonight we have quite a few members of the family here. Our distinguished panel over there, Dr. Rolf and Dr. Sam, which I'm sure everybody knows. And I know that Barrett is here, and Heidi is here, and a few other members of the family. And I also want to reach out and say thank you to Heidi. Heidi was the one that kind of organized this on behalf of the family, correct?
Oh, yes.
So thank you to Heidi. We're going to see this slide presentation that Heidi put together, and I'm going to just read the information that they gave me for each one, and I'm hoping that Rolf and Sam will interject whenever they want to. And so if anybody has any questions too, we'll have a question and answer at some point. So if you give me just a moment, I'll get the slideshow started.
Randy, the lights.
Yep.
The lights.
Randy, don't think that I forgot when you got me put on detention in kindergarten in 1959 in Mrs. Primo's class. It was a downhill spiral that's never stopped.
I looked for that class picture as hard as I could. I've got it in my house somewhere, but I'm sure I'll find it tomorrow. All right, just a moment here. Okay. Yes.
Okay, Randy, can we turn off these lights?
Yeah, Bonnie, the lights.
Thank you.
Okay, so 2 generations of the Poser family tree. Here's Doc and Della had 4 sons. Edward, who was known as Pody, and who couldn't pronounce Poser. Frederick, who went by Swede, a blonde. John, who was Bob, and known as Bob, and had long curly hair that bobbed. And Rolf, otherwise Chub, was Chubbins when he was young. So 2 generations of the Poser family tree. Hang on. Okay, Heidi.
They started up in Kewanee, and initially they worked in wood cutting mills, and I think they worked in steamships across Lake Michigan. And they had a store. If you go up to Kewanee, you can see one of their names up on the store there. So they all came from around that area, and there was, how many kids in the family? 6 or 7? I think in the end, from what we can tell, in Doc's generation, he was the only one, I think, that went on to college. The other ones, I think they had 3 or 4 girls, they got married, and then the other ones worked in the late 1890s. They worked as people who made wheels for carts, for wagons. What would you call that? Cartwright? No, that's
Cartwright.
Bonanza. There's another word which I can't come up with. But Randy, I'm having the cover for you, so.
I appreciate it. Okay, so maybe Sam mentioned this, but Dr. Edward Martin, Doc Poser, started the Poser Clinic in Columbus in 1895. He was the son of a blacksmith who immigrated from Germany and settled in Kewanee. And just by coincidence, he started in 1895. That's the same year that the Bellocs building was built that we're going to have our museum in. Too many gadgets. Doc had an earlier nickname of Gimp. He said it was given to him by an old blacksmith. At the time, it meant spirit, vigor, and ambition, and described him well. So, 8 children were born in the family, and Doc was the only one to get a professional degree. When he was in high school, he started working at C&J Roberts Druggists in Kewanee. In those days, the main remedies were morphine, paregoric, and whiskey, and drugstores also served as general stores. So they had whiskey, but no bullets to bite on, apparently. So Doc took an interest in pharmacy and may have thought he would do a 4 to 5 year apprenticeship and then open his own store. But times were changing. In 1883, the UW-Madison Pharmacy School opened, and it was clear that a formal degree in pharmacy was the way of the future. So he enrolled in the 2-year program at Madison. Pharmacists across the state were working together to start an organization to promote their profession, and O.N. Falk, who had a pharmacy in Stoughton, was one of the charter members of the Wisconsin Pharmaceutical Association. After graduation, Doc went to work for the Falk drugstore and stayed for 2.5 years. He had the benefit of working with someone who owned a well-established drugstore and who was active in the profession at the state level. And Owen Falk had the benefit of working with someone who had a degree in pharmacy. Doc later said that when the drugstore started selling bird cages and other items, he decided it was time to move on. So he entered the 2-year program at Rush Medical School in Chicago, and while in school he played second base for their baseball team. This is a picture of the operating theater at Rush and was how med students learned surgical procedures. So residencies did not exist then, but upon graduation he worked for a year at the Milwaukee County Hospital. And this picture, by the way, is in a frame next door in the City Hall in the council chambers. They have most of the mayors going back into the 1800s, pictures on the wall. Doc opened his own office on 20th and Walnut in Milwaukee, but after 4 months without a single patient, it occurred to him that he should move on. This is a current photo of that location, and it looks like he'd still be waiting for his first patient. He had been to Columbus before and thought he would give it a closer look. So on December 29th, 1894, he registered at the Whitney Hotel at Columbus. He got into a conversation with a man who knew someone Doc had played cards with in Milwaukee. The conversation turned to the man's wife, who was very ill, and she became Doc's first patient. His experience in sales did do him some good. In the early days, he would take his horse and buggy and race through town as if to an emergency, and it wasn't long before he built up a good practice. Doc did everything general practitioners did back then: appendectomies, setting bones, delivering babies, whatever was needed. He was a keen observer and had a knack for diagnosing. He was also a no-nonsense person. When he made a call to a farm where he was told the daughter had stopped eating, he noticed that she was not losing weight. He got a section of garden hose and started oiling the end of it, and she decided to start eating with the family again. He had a small office in his home, but house calls were most of his practice. In the early days, he was available by buggy or sleigh 24/7 every day of the year. He kept 7 horses in the barn behind his house, and they were all wild. He said he drove fast because he didn't get paid for being on the road. Once he established himself, he returned to Stoughton to ask for the hand of Della Follick, daughter of the Stoughton druggist. They roomed with Mrs. Griffith for a short time in what was Alice Schmidt's house, before the house next door came up for sale. In 1899, they purchased the Captain C.C. Baker House on what was then Broadway Street, which is now Dickinson Boulevard. That look familiar, Sam?
The wooden sidewalks.
James Quickenden offered Doc an office above the Calk drugstore, now Forward Pharmacy. He charged Doc with the first month's rent, but later said when he saw 17 patients in Doc's waiting room in the first week, he returned the rent money. The number of prescriptions written in a year went from 340 to almost 10,000. That remained Doc's office until he retired in 1957. Doc was a tireless worker and promoter of Columbus. He was a charter member of Rotary, a member of the Knights of Pythias, and of the Olivet Men's Club, which was comprised of the local business and professional men at that time. And just another connection here to our future museum, the Knights of Pythias met in the upstairs, where the Belloc store was and where our museum will be. And if you look at the top of the front of the building, way at the top, it'll say K of P. And so that was for Knights of Pythias. And the community showed Doc a great amount of support and appreciation. When he won a malpractice suit that was brought against him, he was nominated for mayor. He accepted the nomination and went on to win the election in 1907. During his tenure as mayor, a sanitary sewer system was installed downtown. He declined to run for re-election, saying that he could not win because people were unhappy about the cost of the sewer project. So I would like to personally thank him. If you take a look at that picture, can you get your bearings there? Look at the building in the upper left-hand corner. You recognize that? That would be Forward Pharmacy. Forward Pharmacy today. So. Okay, this event coincided with a brief run of a newspaper written in German called the Columbus Echo. Doc purchased stock in the fledgling Columbus Canning Company and was voted director, president, and manager of the plant in 1909. Sounds like a one-man business. He purchased one of the first Badger automobiles in 1910 and was probably instrumental in allowing the finished cars to be stored on the 3rd floor of the canning company while waiting to be sold. He later told of a trip back from Stoughton in his Badger when he had 30 blowouts and drove into town with 3 flat tires. I hope he had AAA. He hung on to his horse and buggy for almost 20 years. So Doc and Della had 4 boys. They were very indulgent parents, supported all their boys' activities. Doc started encouraging his boys to play sports at a very young age. So would that be Bob?
Yes. Headshot.
That's the picture. It could be either, but probably Bob.
Your sister, she's right.
Oh, that headshot.
There was a grass tennis court in the backyard, ponies, which occasionally made it into the house, and a basketball hoop in the downstairs hall. One sports writer later noted that the lack of a backboard probably helped the boys develop their arched shots. Bob and Chubb both graduated from UW-Madison and then from the 4-year program at UW School of Medicine and Public Health with internal medicine specialties. Bob did an internship at St. Luke's in Chicago, 2 years of general surgery at Wisconsin General Hospital in Madison, and was partway through a general surgery residency at Cook County Hospital in Chicago when he was drafted into the Army and served as a doctor at Percy Jones Hospital in Battle Creek. And of course, while he was stationed at Lawson General Hospital in Georgia, he played for the home team. So it looks like Bob was the second row far right. And Chubb did a 1-year internship at St. Joseph Hospital in Chicago, followed by a 6-month residency in pathology at Cook County Hospital in Chicago, and a 4-year residency in internal medicine at Wisconsin General Hospital in Madison, where he was chief resident and had additional cardiology training. Chubb was diagnosed with tuberculosis in 1942. He spent about a year convalescing and was unable to serve in the war. Bob and Chubb joined their father's practice in Columbus in 1946. The oldest son, Pody, was an eye, ear, nose, and throat doctor who lived in Evanston, Illinois, and saw patients at the Poser Clinic every other Saturday morning for over 50 years. So the second oldest son, Fred, or Swede, became a lawyer and worked for a time with Lloyd Post. So another thing to look at in the picture here, I don't know if you can see it, between Edward and Bob, there's gas pumps in the back there. Any idea where that is?
Yeah, that's Julie's.
That's Julie's Java House. Yep, was a gas station at one time. So he met the love of his life, Mary Garrett, later in life. They married in 1952, and he moved to Hagerstown, Maryland. She was worth the wait. In 1950, Doc was honored by the Chamber of Commerce for 55 years of service. The practice had long outgrown the space above the drugstore, and construction was started on a new building at 635 Park Avenue. The clinic was fortunate to have a wonderful staff: artists Sarbacher, Donna Emko, Elaine Schilling, Elaine Grossman, Fred Donor, and others, many of whom worked there for over 40 years. In 1960, when it came time to move to the new building, Bob and Chubb headed to Minneapolis for the Wisconsin-Minnesota football game and left the moving to their wonderful staff. They were ready for patients on Monday morning, and I did look it up. Minnesota beat the Badgers 26-7 that day. So now we're getting to the next generation. So Chubb and his wife Mary had 2 sons who became doctors. Rolf graduated from the Medical College of Wisconsin in Milwaukee in internal medicine. He did a 3-year residency in internal medicine at the University of Hawaii, followed by a 2-year fellowship in cardiology at Harvard under Dr. Lown. He joined the Poser Clinic in 1983. And Sam graduated from the University of Wisconsin Medical School in Madison in internal medicine, followed by a 3-year residency at the University of Hawaii. Sam joined the Poser Clinic in 1985. Bob and his wife, Libby, had one son who became a doctor. John became a plastic surgeon. He worked at the clinic in 1979, and in 1983 to 84, he has a practice in Florida. So this was the Bucky Badger logo from 1930 to 1935 when Bob and Chubb were at the university. Doc had a love of boxing and baseball. He learned how to box at the Turner Hall in Kewanee and played baseball throughout his youth. He tried out for the Chicago Cubs in 1892 while he was at Rush, but decided medicine was a more stable job. He and Della encouraged all the boys in sports, and Bob and Chubb were the most successful. Chubb was on the 1929 high school team that won the Little 10 championship.
I think that picture is after they won third place in the state tournament, and that's before they divided all the schools up into 6 or 7 or 8 different divisions. And he said that he was the tallest guy on the team, and he was 5'5". He then ended up staying out of, after graduating from high school, he stayed out of college for a year in order to grow.
So, Bonnie, can we switch those light switches once and put the light over there and not over here? Yeah, it says here, he looked younger and was smaller than the other players, which earned him the nicknames Poser, Midget Forward, and Babyface Poser. He was also on the 1930 high school team that came in second to Madison Central in the Little 10. There was some controversy about allowing Madison Central to compete in the Little 10, but the fledgling WIAA wanted them there to increase attendance at the tournament in Madison. So we've got maybe Chubb in the middle holding the ball, correct?
Yep.
Okay, and Bob helped to start the Broadway Bulldogs baseball team when he was still in middle school. The team was so named because they practiced in Bob's backyard on Broadway. They were renamed St. Mary's Blues and sold tickets as a fundraiser for the hospital. Later, they became the Columbus Blues and won the Home Talent League Championship for South Central, Wisconsin in 1932. I remember seeing the Blues play in the 60s when I was a kid, but I don't know if they continued all the way through, if they were just resurrected, I would assume. And so here we've got Chubb in the back row, second from the left. And then Bob, I think Bob front row, second from the left. Does that look right?
That looks right.
The brothers' success in sports continued in college. They both attended UW-Madison, and they both played basketball and baseball, and they were both inducted into the Badgers Hall of Fame. Chubb was inducted in 1993 for a two-team captain of basketball team, including the 1935 Big Ten Conference squad, championship squad, leading scorer in the 1935 basketball team, three-time Major W Award winner in basketball and baseball, and he received the 1935 Big Ten Medal of Honor for proficiency in athletics and scholastic work. This award was given to one student athlete from the graduating class of each university in the Big Ten. And so there's Chubb receiving an award from Pat Richter. So Bob was inducted in 1996 as a pitcher and outfielder on the Badgers' 1930 Big Ten Championship baseball team. He led the team in 1930 team with a .391 batting average, on the way to receiving all league honors. Appointed captain of the men's basketball team in 1933, he coached the UW baseball team from 1935 to 36, set a Western League single game record with 9 RBIs in a single game in 1933. In 1932, after he led his UW team to the Big Ten Championship with a league-leading .432 batting average, Bob made his debut with the Chicago White Sox. He negotiated his contract with Charles Comiskey. His career with the Sox was brief. He pitched for 2/3 of an inning, played 1 inning in the outfield, and pinch hit 4 times. But he had the opportunity to play with Luke Appling, who was his roommate on the road, Ted Lyons and Red Faber, all future Hall of Famers. He then played for 2 AA teams before returning to UW Medical School in 1934 and coaching the UW baseball team. In 1935, Rogers Hornsby, manager of the St. Louis Browns, signed Bob up as a relief pitcher and started him against Lefty Grove, who many considered the best lefty in history. That lasted nearly 3 innings. While interning at St. Luke's, Bob pitched batting practice for the Chicago Cubs and the White Sox when they were in town. Just a personal note to throw in here. A number of years ago, I went to the Shoebox over by Black Earth, and Steve Schmidt, who owns it, was a big St. Louis baseball fan, and he waited on me that day when I was in there, and he asked where I was from, and I said Columbus, and he says, Bob Poser. That was his reply. And apparently, he would go down to St. Louis for reunions down there that they had down there. And St. Louis Browns later became the Baltimore Orioles. Bob's son, John, was also a standout athlete. He was co-captain of the UW baseball team and was voted the best pitcher in the Big Ten Conference while in pre-med at the University of Wisconsin. He was the only freshman at the UW who played 3 sports at that time. So during John's residencies, he pitched batting practice for the Chicago White Sox and the Detroit Tigers. So here's a newspaper clipping talking about John and somebody else, another salesman, that the 2 of them threw the batting practice. Bob became one of the Diamond Docs, 25 Major League Baseball players who have also been physicians. The Poser women are all familiar with the unpredictable schedules and long waited times inherent with marrying someone who practices medicine. They share their husband's accomplishments. Libby Shearer Poser had 3 children and was active in the hospital auxiliary. Mary Groom Poser had 6 children. She worked on 2 major fundraisers for the Columbus Hospital and was on the First Hospital Foundation board. She made major contributions to the Preservation Commission and Main Street program, and she spearheaded the daunting task of saving the Whitney building from demolition. So, Rolf, I'm going to let you moderate this here and then take us around the room, whether on the screen or in person or both.
Okay. This is my family.
Closer.
What? This is my family. So we live 509 West Prairie Street. We've been there for a long time. My son Dave, his wife Melissa, behind me, my wife Aline. My grandchildren, Gabriel, Eva, Sophia, they're here tonight. My son might be here, I don't know. Probably. And Ahana, my daughter, her significant other behind her, Catherine, with the red shirt. And that's several years ago. You know.
He's going to be a grandfather again.
Oh, and yeah, just not.
So, any of Rolf's family that's here, please stand up at this time. And then Sam, it's your turn.
That's my wife and me and my son Stevie, my daughter Helen, my son Ed, and my son Mike. Mike's here tonight, and Helen is here tonight. And she's going to be a mother.
Stand up. Want to stand up, please?
Mike, stand up. And Mike's wife Emily. He took a bullet for women everywhere.
One thing going back to Rolf's family, that it says that Lean has training in English as a second language and has volunteered at Columbus Middle School and used her skills extensively with her children and grandchildren. And Josie, Sam's wife, has helped maintain cultural traditions with her siblings' families and is a dedicated member of St. Jerome's Church.
She left me to go to Portugal, Spain, and France, to every place where the Virgin Mary was seen. I miss her, but she'll be back in a few days.
Okay, so medicine has changed so much in 4 generations for the doctors and their staff. Doc's first employee was a driver who handled the horses on its calls. It wasn't unusual for him to be paid with a dead chicken. Bob and Chubb expanded to 4 staff, a nurse, lab technician, and 2 office staff. Currently, there are 14 full, part-time, and remote staff. Our dedicated staff, many of whom have stayed with us for years, have contributed to the clinic's longevity and success. So, who would like to take us around the room there?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think Elaine Grossman is here today. If Elaine could stand up. And all those rumors of her and me spending a wild weekend in San Diego together were not true. Roger signed in under my name, and
You want to make mention of everybody in the screen there?
better. See, that's me back when I had my own knee. That's Sister Barrett, the brains behind the operation. That's Sherry, she's here today. Sherry, stand up. That's Shannon, and she's doing Mikey's first prostate exam. Notice the smile on his face. That's Rolf. That's Connie, who apparently is in some type of trouble with the DOT. Is that true? That's Mel. That's Nancy, who's retiring tomorrow. Mrs. Venden, are you here, Mrs. Venden? Mrs. Venden? Stand up. That's Mrs. Conforti. She's Italian. That's Hannah. And that's Aloysius. Hannah, could you stand up? There.
And any other, either past or present clinic employees that are here that we did not mention?
Alice Gibson, stand up. Anybody else? Mrs. Velcro. We're stuck on you.
Okay, anybody else?
Maggie, stand up.
Thank you, sit down. Okay, so Barrett joined the clinic staff in 1983 and has seen the office through massive changes. She's seen the office through massive changes in technology, regulations, and staffing. She has managed those changes with efficiency and humor, and the staff is especially grateful to her for leaving the chocolates in the break room rather than putting them in her desk drawer. She has trouble believing, though, that she's worked at the clinic for over 40 years. The clinic was built with 2 rental units on the ground floor that were home to local family-owned businesses for decades. Bale and Leader's Law Office and Earl Yankee's Dental Office were long-term tenants. Carroll Valley CPA office was there for a few years as well. After 3 generations in business with only 1 move, we have accumulated a number of historic artifacts.
You mean Rolf?
Some of Doc's smaller items are displayed in cases in the waiting room. Doc's bag with apothecary vials is from the early 1900s. It was used for house calls. Wonder if there's a expiration date on any of those. Doc purchased his Harvard Company reclining dental chair, one of the early reclining examination chairs. It was designed by a lawyer who had patents on the stirrups and headrest. Manufacturing began in 1896. The Mason and Davis scale dates to about the 1920s, and it still works. Here's an early allergy or allergen testing kit, and I was looking close at what they're all listed for, and I think it lists about every vegetable that there's known to mankind. The Fisher Type H X-ray and high frequency outfit could be set on cautery, diagnostic, or sinusoidal circuits, depending on what you were trying to achieve. Now it says here I'm supposed to ask Sam if he has any comments.
If you see that yellow cord on the right-hand side, there wasn't anything that plugged into the side of a wall because they must not have had wall side plugs yet. So you had to take out a light bulb and then put the machine in there, the electricity going up into that, and it must have been somewhat useful. If you look at those glass things on the top, they can fit into any orifice that you can think of, and although my sister Heidi said it sounded like a little quackery, this is probably the 1920s or very long time ago when there were no antibiotics or anything. And I think, is John Russell here someplace? Can he stand up?
I don't want to.
So he's the president of the hospital, and he knows when they clean out rooms at the hospital, they'll put in a portable little machine that gives out an intense amount of light that kills bacteria. And I think by having this machine set up with electricity, it probably was used for some type of antibiotic type ways of killing bacteria. So it wasn't as much quackery as Heidi thought it might have been, but there probably was a certain amount of it. And that's a portable one. And you can really see the orifices that those were going into.
It says here some remedies were found to be ineffective. The Renew Life Violet Ray machine was very popular for home and office use in the 1930s. It's used It used electricity to stimulate tissue and claimed to treat arthritis, hysteria, and more. I think I would be hysterical if that was used. In the 1940s, Doc purchased Chubb the first portable electrocardiogram machine to keep him on the cutting edge. Rolf, would you like to add anything?
That's been around for a long time, and you can't imagine how heavy it is. It's ridiculous. And it was my impression that Elaine carried this like to the nursing home or other patients' homes to do EKGs. But I think Elaine just told me recently that that was not the case. So it's very heavy. It's a single channel machine. It's all analog, but it was very useful. You could still turn it on today and do a single channel EKG. You could do 12. You could do 12 leads at a time, at one time.
But by 1970, we had a better machine at the nursing home.
The machines now weigh, 12 pounds or so. This was, you can hardly lift it, and it's, but it was state of the art.
Before they developed that machine, it took probably a small office space with 5 people to do an EKG. It was just something you didn't do much. That's why people would call heart attacks acute indigestion, because they really couldn't make any diagnosis with it.
All right, the photomotograph measured the Achilles tendon reflex as an index of thyroid function. Sam, would you like to add anything?
This was a few years ago, but this guy's probably the head of endocrinological surgery at the UW now. He came to introduce himself, and I asked him a question to see how much he knew about endocrinology, and showed him that machine. And I said, "Where do you think this goes?" So where the person's foot is supposed to go, he put his face into it. That machine would measure, if your thyroid was really overactive, your Achilles tendon reflex would kind of look like this, and if it was real low, it would probably kind of look like this. But that type of machine was on Skylab, if you remember the 70s. So it was considered probably, very, very important machinery at that point. So
It was so basic, and now it's so inaccurate, but it's all they had to measure what your thyroid status was. A slow reflex, well, that would go away. That would go with a very bad case of low thyroid, and when it's too fast, then a thyroid way too high. Artist taught me how to use this, and she actually used it we used it a little bit in the late 70s, early 80s, I think, and then thyroid testing came along that was much, much more accurate.
Office equipment has changed as well. Doc's office journals date from 1895. Office visits were 50 cents and house calls were $1. Probably doubled by now, right?
when Rolf started practicing, the office call was $11, but when I came, Chubb saw the value I added and increased it up to $18.
Check writers were used until the early 90s. And we've managed to keep Doc and Della's house in the family for 126 years. And Sam, I don't see the wooden walk.
It's better now, but since my cast iron plumbing just collapsed, you might have noticed Wright's Plumbing in my backyard, and they had to dig it all out and put plastic in. But that cast iron stuff was an inch thick, and I'm imagining after Doc put in indoor plumbing and had this cast iron put in, that it's been there since 1907. So Right now, we're just getting used to being able to use the toilet again.
I think that little window area on top, the second floor, I think they built that for Chuck to recover from TV when an open air.
That is a false family tradition.
But it was true when I was growing up.
That is good.
So what is it really?
Supposedly they tore down the barns where they had the horses in back, and then Heidi would be the expert on this, or Barrett. But they ended up making that thing. But I do remember one of our patients that I had, a guy called Ed Nitz, would be walking along, if you remember Ed Nitz. Yeah, he would go walking along there apparently, and Chubb was up there. Not that it was built for that, but he was up there getting the good sun and fresh air as much as you could, and he'd stop by and say hello into a small room with a guy that had TB.
The Poser men have found medicine to be a very rewarding career, and they have chosen to go to the office as long as they could. Doc was 89 when he no longer went to the office. Bob was about 90 when he stopped going to the office. Chubb was 83 when he stopped going to the office. Throughout his life, Chubb kept up with the changes in medicine. He subscribed to numerous medical journals and applied what he learned to his practice. In 1977, at the age of 64, he wanted to challenge himself, so he took the internal medicine board exams again, and he passed.
I barely passed the first time, and I have chosen not to challenge myself, except for maybe in physical therapy with my knee.
So, Rolf, I'll let you talk about this next picture.
My daughter Hannah. She did medical school in Virginia and went to Rush, just like my father and my grandfather, I just learned recently. And she's a hospitalist now in North Carolina.
And Sam?
I never saw this smile growing up for all those years. He still makes me call him Mr. State Champion after winning the soccer championship, or captain. But Mike, he went to medical school, and he went to lacrosse to college. He went to medical school in Denver, Rocky Vista, and then he did his residency at Chicago, Sweden, and then he swept off the feet a resident who was 1 year younger than him when they met for the first time, and they got married in possibly one of the fanciest weddings that a poser has ever been involved in. And that's Emily back there. They're both hospitalists at St. Mary's Hospital, and Mike spent 2 years with us, which we had a great time, and every week I get a comment about people liking him, and I just got a comment from someone at St. Mary's that said you stopped in there and were very nice to him. So he's keeping track of stuff in Columbus, and Emily and him are living a pretty nice life.
Okay, now we don't have a mic with Barrett, but Barrett and Ross's daughter, Elle, is doing a residency in air care in Cincinnati. Ellie, okay. So Barrett, I don't know if you want to come up and grab a mic and expound on that. Check in.
Elizabeth graduated from University of Madison and did her med school at Medical College of Wisconsin, where Rolf was. And she's now at University of Cincinnati, and she is in a 4-year program for emergency medicine.
And she is the intellectual of the family. She's pretty smart and intimidating physically.
Okay, the Poser Clinic is the oldest family-run clinic in the state of Wisconsin. Our philosophy has not changed through 4 generations. Medicine is about patient care. We have been proudly and happily serving our community for 130 years. And here is just part of the family tree that we didn't show earlier. So there is Frederick, that would be Swede, right? And they had no kids.
They had no kids, but to put in perspective what life was like back then, he was born in 1904, I think.
Yes.
During the 4th of July celebration, they had a boxing ring with a professional boxer, and if you got into the ring and lasted around without being knocked out, you apparently won some type of a prize. And he actually won the prize. He didn't get knocked out. But then he roomed with Pody, his older brother, born in 1902. They lived in Madison, and Pody knocked out Swede in a fight.
Let's get past Pody there. So Pody and Marcia had 2 sons, Edward and John.
Pody was in the ROTC at Madison, and he was doing jumping jacks next to Charles Lindbergh. So I thought I'd get a nice long talk on what Charles Lindbergh was like. And I said, Pody, what was Charles Lindbergh like? And he said, he seemed like a nice guy.
Okay, and then we have the family of Bob and Libby. They had 3 children, John, as we mentioned before, Ann and Tom. And then Chubb and Mary had 6 children, Rolf, Chris, Sam, Steve, Heidi, and Barrett. And that is it for the slideshow at this time. We're going to show a video that was put together, a couple of years ago?
Yes.
By Ed and Thomas?
Yeah, they did a very nice job, and I was the victim.
All right, so just give me a minute and we'll get that video up.
Just to fill time up. You know, Bob had a fantastic athletic career, and he played with, for, or under about 15 people in the Baseball Hall of Fame. And he has a 1-1 record. He won 1 game in the big leagues, and he lost 1 game to Lefty Grove. But he said between games, guess what the ball players would do? Mr. Kaland, you have a look like you know it. Take a guess what they did. They played bridge, which is, I could never get past euchre. You know? It's a very intellectual game, and I think Omar Sharif have a weekly column on bridge in the paper? So, but in 1937, does anyone remember Wilbur Frake? Yeah. What was his job in Columbus here? I think he was a carpenter too. Yeah, I remember coming to the house, but Bob and Wilbur Frake were on the Madison Blues, and they played the greatest Negro League baseball team in a doubleheader over in Madison. And what was the name of that team? Peter? You're dying to say it. Satchel Paige, Hank Aaron, they all started out on that.
You think from local Alabama?
No. The Kansas City Monarchs.
Oh, yeah.
Kansas City Monarchs, and Bob made a 3 feet by 4 feet scrapbook with all his athletic things in it. He played basketball against John Wooden, the greatest coach of all time. And he had all this stuff with all this stuff in it, and on the front in gold letters it said Dr. Bob Poser for Chubb Poser. He made his scrapbook for Dad, which I think didn't end up at the house, but in the end, in the second game of the doubleheader, Bob was playing in the outfield. It was an 11-inning game, and he got a walk-off home run against the Kansas City Monarchs, which had 3 different players that are in the Major League Hall of Fame. So if you ever watch baseball TV now, there's a announcer that used to be on the Brewers team. He was a reliever. What was his name, Mr. Kaland? He was a
Not Bob Euchre.
not Bob Euchre. It started with a P. He's on TV now. He was a reliever for the Brewers, but
Dan Plesac?
Dan Plesac. But there's a book called One Hit Wonders. There was a doctor out in Washington, I think, that was interested in Bob's story, and he actually interviewed Libby and everyone and wrote a little chapter on him. But it ended up in kind of a book called One Hit Wonders, which was just guys who were in the major leagues and just got one hit, which is more than Moonlight Graham got, and he got a movie made out of him. But I was always wondering if, since Bob got a walk-off home run off Kansas City Monarchs with 3 different Hall of Fame players, shouldn't that count as a major league hit? Say yes, especially you. You've just been laughing at me all this time. So he had a very colorful athletic career, and if you've ever been in the clinic, Bob, when he stopped operating, would stand in the front desk and greet people when they came in. He was very social, and after in the second Hall of Fame class at the UW, Chubb got in, and Bob was madder than heck. He thought he was the president of the W Club, and he had done all this athletic stuff, but Chubb got in there first. So the first thing I did after finding out, I went to Fred Shepard and told him to make a 10-foot by 4-foot plaque with Chubb and his Hall of Fame thing that Bob had to stare at for 3 years. And then Bob finally got in, and then I made the one that's over the fish tank, the Diamond Docks. So I got even for Chubb.
That lady in the front row that's been laughing at you, that's my sister. I paid her to do that. So we'll watch the short video here first, and then we'll wrap up with you reminiscing more, any questions and answers, and well, as long as we're out of here by midnight, we'll be fine.
I think the one important thing to remember is that where we're sitting now is where Chubb delivered the last Poser Clinic baby from an internist, because Mrs. Marks was basically, or this is where the meat market was, wasn't it? And Mrs. Marks, are you here someplace?
In the corner, way back in the corner.
But stand up, Mrs. Marks. So Chubb told the story thousands of times, but he got a call to come over here, and he was an internist, so birth is not a beautiful thing, as all internists know. And there was only Mrs. Marks's mom who was having a baby, Mrs. Marks, and Mrs. Marks's dad. So Chubb said, I guess, get a pan full of hot water and come in here and give me a hand. So he went out to get some hot water, and on the way back in, he fainted. Is that right? So Chubb was left to himself to deliver Mrs. Marks. So really, Mrs. Marks is a national institution. So this place should be called the Mrs. Marks Birthplace Memorial.